Welcome to the Zayd podcast. I'm Zayd Haji. I want you to imagine that this is not an episode you're listening to while multitasking, but a conversation we're having late at night when your mind is honest and distractions are low. Because the topic today is not really about AI. It's about something more personal. It's about how your relationship with effort is quietly changing and how that change is shaping who you will become. Let's begin there. I keep noticing something whenever I talk to students and professionals. There is this subtle exhaustion in their voice, not the exhaustion of hard work, but the exhaustion of having too many shortcuts. They know that answers are always available. They know that ChatGPT can write anything. They know they can finish an assignment in minutes. And yet, they feel strangely behind, strangely uncertain, strangely unconfident. That contradiction is not accidental. It is the psychological cost of skipping struggle. Because struggle is not just difficulty. Struggle is where your brain decides that something matters enough to remember. When you wrestle with a paragraph, when you stare at a blank page and force a sentence into existence, when you argue with yourself about whether an idea makes sense, your brain is not just producing work. It is producing you. It is wiring circuits that say, I am someone who can think. Now imagine what happens when that process is replaced by instant output. You receive clean paragraphs without sweat. You submit work without wrestling. You move on without reflection. On the surface, you save time. Underneath, you lost identity-building moments. And identity is not built in comfort. It is built in effort. This is why recent brain studies showing lower neural engagement during AI-assisted writing should not surprise us. The brain is economical. If a machine is doing the work, the brain will not waste energy pretending. It will step back. But the tragedy is that the brain does not distinguish between temporary rest and permanent delegation. Habits form quietly. If you repeatedly tell your brain you don't need to think, eventually it believes you. And this is where I want to be very clear. AI is not dangerous because it is powerful. AI is dangerous because it is convenient. Most harmful things in human history did not arrive with violence. They arrived with comfort. They arrived with the whisper, you don't have to do this yourself. For students, this is particularly risky because education is not primarily about grades. Grades are a side effect. Education is about training the mind to stay with complexity long enough to make sense of it. When AI handles complexity for you, you receive the appearance of knowledge without the structure of understanding. I want you to notice something subtle. When you use AI to write an assignment, do you feel relief or satisfaction? Relief comes from escaping effort. Satisfaction comes from completing effort. Those two feelings are very different. Relief fades quickly. Satisfaction stays and compounds. A life built on relief becomes fragile. A life built on satisfaction becomes resilient. Now let's go one layer deeper. Most people think the problem is that AI gives wrong answers or hallucinated content. That is a surface level problem. The deeper problem is that AI gives generic answers unless you provide deep context. And most students do not have deep context yet. They are still forming it. So they ask vague questions. And AI returns statistically average responses. And then students adopt those responses as their thinking. Slowly, without realizing it, they inherit a worldview that was not chosen, but defaulted. If you ask, how do I succeed? AI gives the consensus definition of success. If you ask, what should I study? AI gives the mainstream paths. If you ask, how do I improve myself? AI gives socially acceptable self-help advice. None of it is wrong, but none of it is necessarily yours. And this is where the real danger lies. Not in cheating, not in laziness, but in identity drift. You begin to sound like everyone else. You begin to think like everyone else. You begin to aspire to what everyone else aspires to. And one day you wake up in a life that feels generic because it was built from generic inputs. Real originality has always come from friction with the world, from failing at something real, from building something small. from testing an idea in reality, from noticing something others ignore. AI cannot give you that, it can only remix what already exists. This is why experience must come before AI, not after it. You go into the world, you try, you embarrass yourself, you misunderstand, you get corrected, you adjust, you gather stories, you gather scars, you gather perspective. Then you bring that raw material to AI and say, help me sharpen this. That is when AI becomes powerful. But if you skip experience and go straight to AI, you are asking it to create personality out of probability. And probability always leads to average. Let's talk about environment for a moment, because environment is often the invisible teacher. A student on a phone is in consumption mode. Notifications, scrolling, quick interactions, instant rewards. A student on a laptop, writing, researching, comparing sources, switching tabs intentionally, is in creation mode. These two modes teach the brain different rhythms. One teaches reactivity, the other teaches agency. If you pair AI with a consumption environment, you get shallow use, copy-paste medal. If you pair AI with a creation environment, you get collaboration. Question, edit, compare, rewrite, reflect, same tool, different mind. And the difference is not technological, it is psychological. This is why I keep saying that the future advantage will not belong to people who know how to use AI. Everyone will. The real advantage will belong to people who still know how to think without it. People who can sit with discomfort long enough to produce a rough idea, because only then does AI become a multiplier rather than a crutch. Think of it this way. AI can give you 10 ideas in seconds, but only you can recognize which idea feels true to your curiosity. I can write beautiful sentences, but only you can decide whether those sentences reflect your voice. AI can explain complex topics, but only you can integrate them into your worldview. Judgment cannot be outsourced, and judgment is the real scarce skill of the future. Now let's bring this back to students, because this is where the stakes are highest. If you build the habit of outsourcing thought now, you will struggle later when life demands original judgment, when your job requires decisions with no template, when your business faces a problem with no precedent, when your relationships demand emotional intelligence rather than information. AI cannot live your life. AI takes responsibility for consequences. That burden will always return to you. So the question becomes simple but not easy. When you open AI, are you escaping effort or expanding effort? Are you trying to finish faster or understand deeper? Are you replacing your mind or extending it? The answer to that question, repeated daily, quietly builds your future. I want to share something personal here. What excites me about building Zayd is not technology for its own sake. It is the idea that your digital identity should reflect real growth, not perfect outputs, not polished illusions, but evidence that you have thought, tried, failed, learned, and evolved. In a world where AI can generate anything, authenticity becomes the rarest signal. And authenticity is built through effort, not automation. This is why I believe the next generation must not just learn to use AI. They must learn to use themselves first, to understand their attention, their curiosity, their resistance, their strengths, their blind spots. AI is a powerful mirror. But you need a face before you can look into a mirror. Let's end this reflection with a simple but uncomfortable truth. Answers are becoming free. Questions are becoming valuable. The person who can ask better questions will always outgrow the person who waits for better answers. And great questions come from real encounters with the world, from noticing contradictions, from feeling confusion, from refusing to accept the first explanation, from staying curious when others get comfortable. So here is my invitation to you. The next time you open AI, pause for 2 seconds. Ask yourself, what am I trying to avoid right now? If the answer is effort, stay. If the answer is curiosity, proceed. That tiny moment of awareness changes everything. AI is not your enemy. AI is not your savior. AI is your amplifier, and what it amplifies is entirely up to you. If this episode felt like a mirror rather than a lecture, then it did its job. The future is not being decided by AI, it is being decided by how you choose to use it, one quiet decision at a time. This is the Zayd Podcast. I'm Zayd Haji, and here we don't chase shortcuts. We build minds that cannot be replaced. Until next time, keep thinking.